Welcome to a deep dive into the world of early personal computing,
Okay.
guided by the experiences of a tech insider, Steven Sinofsky.
Yeah.
We're digging into his memoir,
Right.
unearthing some surprising stories.
Yeah.
And trust me, there are some real gems in here.
Yeah.
That chart, Microsoft's rise from scrappy startup to software giant.
It's fascinating how Sinofsky captures that
Yeah.
pivotal moment when computers went from being these niche tools
Yeah.
for academics and hobbyists to becoming essential tools for, well, everyone.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Sure.
You know how everyone has that aha
Mm-hmm.
moment
Mm-hmm.
that kind of sets them on their path?
Yeah, yeah.
Sinofsky's happened in college.
Right.
He's struggling in chemistry of all things.
Okay.
But instead of hitting the books, he gets captivated by this idea of creating a program get this, the periodic table.
It's called McMendeleev.
Okay.
And what's interesting is that it wasn't just about the science for him.
Right.
He even teamed up with a classmate, a lab mate, actually, to make sure the visuals were top-notch.
Wow.
Even back then, you see this instinct to make technology engaging, to move beyond just functionality.
And that instinct, that drive for engagement,
Right.
it pops up throughout Sinofsky's journey.
It seems like it.
Speaking of which, did you hear about the time he almost burned down a hotel room?
With a fake fireplace?
Yeah, with a fake fireplace.
It's a good reminder that even brilliant minds have their less than brilliant moments.
Yeah.
But on a more serious note, his path to Microsoft is almost comical.
Okay.
He completely blew off Bill Gates's calls.
Wait, he ignored Bill Gates?
Yes!
How is that even possible?
He thought it was a prank.
Really?
This was back in the early days, right?
Yeah.
Before caller ID.
Okay.
Sinofsky talks about how he'd get these messages. Bill Gates called.
Wow.
And just assumed it was his buddies messing with him.
It really paints a picture of how different Microsoft was back then.
Yeah.
This was before they were a household name, before Windows took over the world. Speaking of Windows, Sinofsky gives this incredible insider account
Yeah.
of how Gates's vision for a graphical interface, the kind of thing we take for granted now,
Right.
was actually a huge gamble.
It's easy to forget that back then.
Yeah.
The command line was king.
Right.
But Gates, he saw the potential of making computers more visual, more intuitive.
Yeah.
Of course, not everyone at Microsoft was thrilled about this new direction.
Okay.
Sinofsky even mentions a key employee who quit to become a farmer.
Old on a farmer? Seriously?
Yep.
Wow.
That's how strongly people felt about this shift to graphical interfaces.
Wow.
It was disruptive, even a little scary.
Yeah.
But for Gates, it was about betting on the future.
And that bet, as we know, paid off big time with Windows 3.0.
Yeah, Windows 3.0.
Which was a huge GE deal.
Huge.
Sinofsky captures the almost unbearable pressure surrounding that launch.
Well, I bet.
The team was working around the clock,
Right.
but even they didn't know the exact release date until the last minute.
Oh, wow.
Talk about a pressure cooker.
Yeah. But amidst all the chaos, there was this electrifying feeling,
Yeah.
both inside and outside Microsoft, that something massive was about to happen.
Yeah.
And they were right.
And they were right.
Windows 3.0, with its then revolutionary graphical interface, sold over 1 million copies in its first few months.
Wow.
It completely changed the game.
It wasn't just an external game that was changing, though, right?
Right.
Sinofsky talks about this whole two gardens thing happening inside Microsoft.
Yeah.
What was that all about?
So he describes Microsoft as having these two distinct internal cultures.
Okay.
Apps and systems.
Yeah.
Think of the apps garden as the folks creating individual software programs like
Yeah.
Word or Excel.
Right.
They were all about user experience, making sure those programs were packed with features and easy to use.
Yeah.
The systems garden, on the other hand, was focused on the underlying operating system,
Well, yeah.
the foundation
Right.
Windows itself.
Yeah.
Their priority was stability,
Okay.
making sure everything ran smoothly.
So you had these two groups, each with its own goals and priorities.
Exactly.
Almost like separate companies under one roof.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it.
Did that ever cause conflict?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Sinofsky talks about how potential hires were even assessed
Wow.
based on which garden they'd fit best in.
Wow.
Imagine asking a job applicant,
Yeah.
so are you more of an apps person or a systems person?
That's wild. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
The success of Windows 3.0 tipped the scales heavily towards the system side.
For sure.
Microsoft was now all about Windows,
Right.
making it the driving force behind everything else.
Yeah.
Which makes sense given the sales figures we were just talking about.
Right.
But wasn't there some irony in that?
How so?
I mean, even with all this momentum, Microsoft was still playing catch-up in a lot of ways.
It's true.
Yeah.
They were this behemoth in the making.
Right.
Yet they were still seen as the underdog compared to established players like WordPerfect and Lotus,
Right.
who dominated the word processing and spreadsheet markets at the time.
So how did they go from underdog to top dog?
Well, part of it was sheer will,
That one.
relentless focus on Windows,
Right.
but it was also about being adaptable,
Okay.
recognizing that they couldn't do everything themselves.
Yeah.
Sinofsky talks about how Microsoft had to forge partnerships,
Okay.
even with former rivals,
Wow.
to establish their dominance.
Wow, that's interesting.
It's a far cry from the company's later reputation for being fiercely independent.
Right. And in the middle of all this, you had the rise of the internet.
Yeah.
How did Microsoft, a company so focused on desktop software, react to this whole new paradigm?
It's funny you bring that up,
Yeah.
because Sinofsky was actually there for a pretty pivotal moment.
Okay.
He describes being in the room when Bill Gates circulated his now famous Internet tidal wave memo.
Oh, wow.
This wasn't just some casual observation about a new trend.
Right.
This was Gates declaring that the internet was going to fundamentally reshape the entire tech landscape.
So what did that mean for Microsoft?
Right.
They couldn't just ignore it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And they didn't.
Okay.
This memo basically forced a company-wide realignment.
Wow.
Sinofsky was instrumental in pushing for the adoption of internet technologies like TCP/IP and HTML,
Okay.
which, and this is crucial, were absolutely essential for Microsoft's internet strategy.
Okay, I'm listening.
To understand why, think of TCP/IP as the address system of the internet,
Okay.
allowing computers to find and communicate with each other.
Right.
HTML, on the other hand, is the language used to create web pages,
Okay.
giving them their structure and format.
Right.
Without embracing these technologies, Microsoft wouldn't have been able to compete
Wow.
in the burgeoning world of the web.
So they recognized the internet as a big deal.
Right.
They started adopting the key technologies.
Right.
But did everyone at Microsoft buy into this new direction?
Not exactly.
Right.
Remember those two gardens we talked about?
Yeah.
That internal divide played a role here, too. Sinofsky talks about this phenomenon called cookie licking,
Cookie licking. Okay.
which basically meant teams within Microsoft would call dibs on an idea,
Oh, yeah.
even if they had no real intention of developing it.
Oh, really?
It was a way of hoarding resources and preventing other teams from getting ahead.
So even with this tidal wave approaching, you still had this internal competition playing out.
Yeah, you could say that.
Wow.
That's a classic example of how corporate culture can sometimes clash with strategic needs.
Right.
But amidst all of this, there was one product that was about to become central to Microsoft's internet strategy,
Yeah.
and that was Office.
So we've got Office, this powerhouse suite of programs,
Right.
needing to find its place in a world that was quickly becoming all about the internet.
Yeah.
That must have been a challenge.
It was a huge shift.
Yeah.
Think about it. Office was designed for individual users,
Right.
people buying software on floppy disks.
Yeah.
But with the rise of the internet,
Right.
and particularly the needs of large businesses, that model was starting to show its limits.
So how did Microsoft adapt? What did they do to make Office appealing to those big companies?
They went big on this new approach.
Okay.
Enterprise agreements.
Enterprise agreements.
Instead of selling individual copies,
Yep.
they started offering these bulk deals to entire organizations.
Okay.
This meant a company could, for a set price, have Office on all their computers,
Right.
along with updates and support.
That sounds like a pretty sweet deal for Microsoft,
Sure.
guaranteeing them a steady stream of revenue.
Right.
But what was in it for the companies signing these agreements?
Predictability and stability.
Okay.
See, large organizations, they crave that.
Okay.
They don't want to deal with constantly upgrading their software,
Right.
worrying about compatibility issues, or managing hundreds of individual licenses.
Right.
Enterprise agreements took away that headache.
It was a win-win then,
Yeah.
at least from a business perspective.
From a business perspective, definitely.
But what about the software itself?
Yeah.
Did Office have to change to meet the demands of these large companies?
Absolutely.
Right.
Sinofsky talks about how security became paramount.
Okay.
It wasn't enough to just have great features anymore.
Right.
Office had to be a fortress,
Yeah.
because a single vulnerability could now impact thousands of users.
Right.
Remember the Melissa virus?
Oh, yeah. That one caused chaos.
Yeah.
Didn't it exploit a weakness in Word or Outlook?
Exactly.
Right.
It spread like wildfire through corporate email systems,
Right.
highlighting just how vulnerable these large networks could be.
Yeah.
For Microsoft, it was a wake-up call.
Yeah.
They had to double down on security,
Right.
baking it into the core of Office,
Yeah.
not just treating it as an afterthought.
It seems like with every step forward, Microsoft faced a new set of challenges.
Yeah, definitely.
First, it was convincing people to embrace graphical interfaces.
Right.
Then it was navigating the rise of the internet.
Right.
And then securing these massive corporate networks.
Yeah. And all the while,
Yeah.
they were still grappling with that internal tension between apps and systems.
Right.
Sinofsky tells this fascinating story about a project called NetDocs.
Okay.
Imagine, if you will, Office, but entirely online,
Oh, yeah.
accessible from any device with a browser.
Right.
Sounds pretty familiar now, right?
It does.
Yeah.
So what happened? Why didn't NetDocs take off?
It was simply ahead of its time.
Really?
The technology wasn't quite there yet.
Oh,
Internet speeds were a fraction of what they are today.
right.
And frankly, most people weren't ready to give up their desktop applications.
Yeah.
But here's the thing.
Okay.
Even though NetDocs was ultimately shelved,
Right.
it hinted at the future of Office.
Yeah.
A future where software would become a service, accessed over the internet, constantly evolving.
So Sinofsky's story,
Yeah.
it's not just about the past, is it?
No, it's not.
It's about understanding how the decisions made back then,
Right.
the challenges faced.
Even the projects that never quite made it shape the technology we use today.
I think that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of these deep dives.
Yeah.
We get to connect the dots,
Right.
see the patterns,
Yeah.
and understand the forces that have shaped and continue to shape the digital world around us.
It's a journey of adaptation and innovation,
For sure.
something I think any learner can appreciate.
Absolutely.
Sinofsky's memoir reminds us that even tech giants like Microsoft had to constantly evolve
Yeah.
to embrace new ideas,
Right.
even when those ideas challenge the very core of their business.
Absolutely.
And that's a powerful lesson for anyone in any field.
I completely agree.
And perhaps the biggest takeaway from all of this,
Okay.
especially as we reach the end of Sinofsky's story,
Yeah.
is that it's really just the beginning.
He leaves us at such an interesting time.
Yeah.
Right on the cusp of a new era.
Right.
With smartphones and cloud computing about to redefine the tech landscape once again. Wow, what a story.
It really is.
It makes you wonder, how did Microsoft,
Yeah.
a company built on the dominance of the PC,
Right.
adapt to this mobile-first, cloud-powered world?
That's such a good question.
And what role would Office play in this new reality?
Yeah.
These questions, they weren't answered in Sinofsky's time,
No, they weren't.
but they are being answered right now,
They are.
every day.
Every single day.
As technology continues its relentless march forward.
It certainly does.
And that's your deep dive.
That's it.
From humble beginnings and quirky anecdotes
Yeah.
to industry-shaking decisions
Right.
and the glimpse into the very soul of a tech giant.
It's all in there.
We've covered it all.
We have.
Until next time, keep those curiosity engines running.
Yeah, keep learning.
And remember, the best way to predict the future is to create it.